Hi, everybody. I'm Jen Baker, and I am the district behaviorist, and this is Quick Tips. We have one person in our live studio audience today who will be joining us, and the rest of you are enjoying this in the comfort of your own homes, hopefully watching this on our YouTube channel. Today, we'll be talking about positive discipline, which is a seemingly contradictory statement, but I'm hoping by the end of today that you'll see why it actually isn't. The whole point of it is we want to do behavior corrections that are effective. So that's the point of today. So before we get started, I've been starting with this quote each week because I think it's really indicative of the times. And I feel for all the parents out there that are doing the best they can multitasking. Working, parenting, and teaching are three different jobs that cannot be done at the same time. It's not hard because you're doing it wrong. It's hard because it's too much. Do the best you can. And when you have to pick, because at some point you will, choose connection. And this is by Dr. Emily W. King. She said this in the spring. All right. Where did we get the crazy idea that in order to make children do better, first we have to make them feel worse? This is by Jane Nielsen, who is a part of Positive Discipline. And children do better when they feel better. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Here's just a few acknowledgments. There are some elements of positive behavior interventions and support. So as usual, I use some of the Midwest PBIS network. And then there's a few different links here that if you download the slides off of our parent webpage, you can access these websites. There's just a couple of different ones that are really good resources on what we call positive discipline. So we always start with our expectations: be safe, be respectful, be responsible. Our one viewer, Tim's been here before, so I'll just cut to the chase if there's anyone new at home. The main one is be responsible. You are responsible for taking what works and setting aside the rest. Everything that I pull from does have an evidence base. But even the best thing in the world, not all things work for all families. So if it doesn't work for you, set it aside and come back next week. All right, so just a quick thing about putting it all together, because today, we've talked in the previous several sessions. I've done 3 different sessions on how to maximize structure and predictability. So in session 1, we talked about the family values matrix, where you identify values and expectations for your family. In the second session, we talked about schedules and routines. Last week, we talked about Zoom fatigue and some things you can do in your schedule to help combat that. And then we've had a couple of sessions where we started to move into teaching and reminding and reinforcing. We talked about behavior-specific praise and the magic ratio in session 3. And we also talked about pre-correction, which is a fancy word for reminding before there's a problem. So all of these sessions are now available on Benisha's YouTube channel, so you can watch any of these if you're interested in them. Thank you, Michael Sharif from our technology department, who is making this possible each week. So what we're going to talk about today is positive discipline and correcting behavior. And I'm going to do a part 2 next week where we get into how to set limits and how to avoid power struggles with your 4-year-old or your 14-year-old. So what is discipline? Too often we forget that discipline really means to teach, not to punish. A disciple is a student, not a recipient of behavioral consequences. And this is Dan Siegel. We'll be hearing more from him later, but he's a psychiatrist and an MD. Well, all psychiatrists are MDs, but he wrote a book called The Whole Brain Child, and he has a lot of videos and things online that are really interesting. And they are linked on our parent webpage. This is also a favorite quote of mine by Herner, 1998. If a child does not know how to read, we teach. If a child does not know how to swim, we teach. If a child does not know how to multiply, we teach. How to drive, we teach. But if a child does not know how to behave, we teach. Not usually. We tend to go to more of the old school framework of punishing. And Herner asks, why can't we finish the last sentence as automatically as we do the others? So today we're going to talk about how to teach. So what is positive discipline? Like I just said, discipline means to teach. So discipline means we show respect, we listen, we reward good behavior, and we remind our children or our teenagers that we love them while we're teaching them right from wrong. And through positive discipline, our children learn responsibility and self-control rather than just evading getting caught because they don't want to get in trouble. What I always like to clarify, because people get confused when they hear positive behavior intervention supports or positive discipline, this is not the same thing as letting kids do whatever they want. Absolutely not. This does not mean that there aren't consequences. Setting effective limits is a critical part of the process. It's just not all of it. And the problem is we tend to think the consequences or the bad stuff or the natural consequences or the punishments are all of it. So this week, like I said, we'll be talking more about positive discipline in general and specifically how to effectively correct behavior in the moment. Next week, we'll be talking about those consequences and how to set effective limits. So we just talked about positive discipline, which means to teach, because we want kids to learn responsibility and self-control. Negative discipline is the more traditional kind of old school way that we react to behavior. So examples might include spanking for young children, yelling, raising our voice, removing privileges. Traditional punishment methods get results through fear, shame, and guilt. And these feelings actually erode self-esteem, which can lead to anger and resentment, which actually just kind of fuels the whole cycle and leads to more bad behavior. I'm a behavior analyst, so I'm especially concerned with, okay, it's great if it feels good, but does it actually work? And there's a lot of research that shows there are a lot of problems if you're relying just on punishment and negative discipline. It does not work as well as positive discipline and teaching. What I also mentioned is it doesn't teach kids to think about why certain behaviors are wrong or how their actions impact others. And this is critical as kids develop to learn to be able to be empathetic and to take other people's perspective. We can't just punish. So some of the benefits of positive discipline, one, like I said, I'm concerned about does it work or not, and it is more effective in the long term. It's designed to strengthen the relationship between people. So it's understanding a kid's needs and ensuring those needs are met. It's understanding that behavior is communicating something. And maybe kids are acting out because it's something emotional or they feel disconnected. I'm more concerned with when they aren't getting a particular need met, that they're trying to communicate, this is too hard, I don't want to do this, I'm mad at you, I'm mad at him, I want more attention, I want less attention. Those are the kind of things that we have to look for. And we want to teach kids how to get their needs met appropriately, primarily through labeling their feelings and telling us what they need. Not that they can always have what they need, but at least they can tell us what they need and we can work with them. It really focuses on, rather than stop doing something, it focuses on teaching kids how to do things the right way. It asks kids to put themselves in other people's shoes. It requires problem solving, which can lead to perspective taking, consideration of others, and feelings of personal responsibility and accountability. So why don't we all use this as much as we should or we would like to? It's because it's a lot harder to do. The results seem slower because punishment and negative discipline seems to work in the moment because it usually makes the behavior stop in the moment. So it kind of gives a false sense of it actually seems to work. But like I said, as a behaviorist, what I'm concerned with is not just, did it stop it on Tuesday, but I want to know, did it then prevent it from happening again on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday? And if we're in this rat race of the same behavior and the same punishment over and over again, to me, that's not effective. So positive discipline takes patience because it takes time to figure out a kid's needs and to teach them a different way. It requires us to put our own feelings on hold so we can maintain that connection. And particularly now when we're in this pressure cooker of all these crazy new demands and rules and situations, and everybody's home all the time and we're around each other all the time, it takes superhuman strength as parents to be patient. And it's hard to put our own needs on hold, because honestly, sometimes if we raise our voice, I've been here myself, it feels better. It's a release for us too, but it doesn't necessarily fix the problem in the long run. So let's talk about what to do as far as how to actually correct behavior in the moment. Because like I said, this doesn't mean that all behavior is okay. Absolutely not. And part of teaching kids is reinforcing when they get it right, but effectively correcting when they don't get it right. So I do put the like we were just talking about, it does take a lot long. It's a lot harder to do positive discipline, and the results, although they last longer in the long term, are sometimes more slow moving. So it's important to remember that this parenting skill takes time and patience, just like learning any other new skill. And as parents, we might not always react to our children the way we'd like, but we'll always get another chance. So constantly reviewing how it went and practicing is what is going to get us moving closer and closer to the reaction that we intended. So I like this quote: patience is a virtue. When it comes to positive discipline, patience is the virtue. And then there's a quote here about just practice makes progress, and progress makes more peace in your home, which is what we're going for. So the first thing, we're not going to talk a lot about this today, but it's worth mentioning. Dr. Dan Siegel, who had that quote in the beginning, talks a lot about name it to tame it. And basically, this is a simple act that kind of recruits the part of our brain. Like we have he kind of says it's like we have our animal brain, and then we have like our higher order thinking brain, the prefrontal cortex. And when we're emotional, we are not acting rationally. And he talks about a simple technique about how to get our prefrontal cortex back online by connecting with what's going on, naming the emotion, and then redirecting it. So there's a little YouTube video. He has a lot of stuff online. I encourage people to look at it. There's a Huffington Post article here called "Flipped Your Lid at Your Kid, One Way to Recover." I'm bringing this up because it's one tool. If you're a parent that finds yourself getting emotional and getting upset, this is one tool that may be helpful to you, because part of doing an effective behavior correction, the golden rule is to keep our cool. It is much more effective if, no matter what the behavior was, if we can come at it firmly and calmly and without emotion. Other tips, always easier said than done, right? But taking a breath before you say anything, counting to 10. Sometimes we need to walk away and come back in a minute. And one of the things that I put on here, which is a real hardcore thing that we've talked about here a lot, is that family matrix, is having your family values and expectations defined and posted, because as parents, you can use that in the moment to refer back to, when you're doing this, that's not respectful. We'd agreed it would look like A, B, and C. So those are all things that you can do to keep yourself calm, but having these things defined and prioritized and in writing and around and regularly reviewed can help you go to that more than what we might be thinking and feeling and what might come out of our mouths instead. So let's go into what a behavior correction is. It's basically just a brief statement immediately following the behavior that we don't want to see anymore. And the focus is specifying what the kid should do differently in the future. So we're basically trying to interrupt the problem behavior and try to get the kid or the teenager redirected to the expected or the appropriate behavior. We want to avoid escalation of the problem behavior. And that's part of the reason we have to keep our cool, because if we come at it with emotion, the kid will usually respond with more emotion, and it kind of escalates from there. So it's, if the kid is up here, we come in down here, and sometimes even doing that and how we respond can bring the emotion and the behavior down and prevent further escalation, because we don't want escalation. We want the behavior to stop and the appropriate behavior to start. The point is it makes it more likely that the kid will exhibit the positive behavior in future similar situations. Like I said, I'm not just concerned with it stopping now. I'm concerned with like the long game here. Is the kid going to start to behave more appropriately in the future? And if we're taking a teaching approach, that answer is more likely to be yes. So how to deliver a behavior correction? I laugh at this first one because I'm so bad at it and it takes a lot of practice. Briefly and concisely. Not going on and on and on and on, talking endlessly. It needs to be short. It needs to be to the point. We point out the problem through specific feedback and redirection. And again, referring to your matrix is helpful. That behavior is not respectful. I need you to lower your voice when you're talking to me. Something like that, like so a sentence or two. We clarify and reteach expectations if we have to. Sometimes the longer conversations and the teaching or the debriefing isn't in the moment. That might need to be later. If a kid's really upset or a teenager's really emotional, I like to say that is not a teachable moment. Come back to that conversation when the emotion is down and everybody's calm and willing to talk about it. Sometimes in the moment, we just need to correct it and redirect it. Remember to use the same calm instructional approach that we would use to correct academic errors. Think what it would look like if we had like would we yell at our kid that like 2 + 2 is an 8? What are you doing? Why did you write that answer? We would never say that if we were helping them with their math. So it's the same thing. If we remember that it's the same way we would be doing it if we were like teaching or coaching with academics, that's the approach that we're going for. And then we always say pair it with behavior specific praise. When and if your kid turns it around and engages in the appropriate behavior, they lower their voice. Thank you for lowering your voice. I appreciate it. That's respectful. Or the next time they talk to you, if they come at you and they're respectful, thank you for speaking to me respectfully. All right. So I like to throw these in. We're not going to spend a lot of time on these because today, again, we're talking about that real specific short behavior correction. But these are some other techniques that also can be more helpful. We'll talk more about this next week when we're setting limits, but things like ignoring the small stuff, sometimes increasing proximity, like approaching rather than like yelling across the room or giving a direction when they're not really listening, like actually increasing your proximity or sometimes a hand on the shoulder or something like that can be effective in interrupting and redirecting. Praising siblings. This works really well in classrooms. I've seen teachers do this where instead of calling out the kid that's not sitting down or ready to go, the teacher starts praising and acknowledging the kids that are ready, and then the other kids start to drop into their desks without even having to be corrected or told directly. So this can be helpful at home if you have siblings in the house. You can praise the siblings for the behavior that you'd like to see in the kid that's not engaging in the good behavior. Giving a look. Like I said, referring to the matrix, reteaching expectations. Instead of focusing on the problem, just trying to get the kid distracted or redirected to something else. Verbally reminding about expectations or having a longer private talk. Debrief, problem solving, something a little longer, do that. But like I said, very often that's something that needs to be removed from the behavior and time. Very often right in the moment is not the best time to have a longer conversation. In the moment, it's all about that effective behavior correction, which is short. So think instruction. When you're correcting a behavior, we want to tell the kids what they should be doing, what we do want them to do. Instead of just knock off X, We want to tell them what it is that we do want them to be doing. Putting the focus on what they shouldn't be doing sometimes even has the opposite effect of making some kids want to do it more to get that negative attention. So it's always better to focus on telling them what they should be doing. So let's talk about a couple of examples. Okay, so instead of saying no yelling, saying something like, I expect you to use your inside voice when we're in the supermarket or whatever. Instead of saying don't run in the house, say please walk. Instead of saying stop hitting your brother, you firmly say, I expect you to treat your brother kindly. If you're upset, you need to use your words. Okay. Some examples we have on the slides. Your child interrupts you while you're speaking on the phone. You hold up your hand, you finish your call, and then you say, next time, please say, excuse me, or give me a signal that you need my attention. If one kid's talking too loudly on the phone, instead of saying, stop yelling, you're making too much noise, stop making noise, you say, please use a quieter voice while your brother's on Zoom. Your teenager leaves his desk and he's laying in bed doing his Zoom classes. So instead of telling him to stop doing that, we could say something like, we agreed that the expectation was that you would do all your sessions at your desk. You can lie down when the session's done. Okay, so these are all examples of how to talk about what they should be doing instead of what they should stop doing. So we only have one person here, so I'm not going to put you on the spot, Tim, but we just have a bunch of what we call non-examples, which are the wrong way, and error correction, which is the right way. So you guys can play along at home, but basically we're going to rephrase each of these examples into an appropriate correction. So given the be concise, be specific, okay? So a non-example, so the wrong way would be, how many times do I have to tell you to get your homework done? I've talked to you 7 million times since 3 o'clock. An alternative to that could be, check your schedule. It is time to start your homework now. Okay. Didn't I just tell you to start your Zoom session? Instead of that, we could say something like, this is your second reminder. Log into your Zoom session. If I have to talk to you again, you'll have less free time. Okay, so again, there's still a consequence there, but instead of going on and on about what's not happening, we're labeling very clearly what's expected, and we're throwing in a limit in this one about what might happen if they don't choose the right choice. So the next one, why are you talking when I'm talking? Or stop interrupting me. You could say, please let me finish before you talk. Why aren't you using your time better? The sooner you get your chores done, the more time you'll have for your iPad before dinner. Do I need to send you to your room? Stop doing that, or I'm, like the empty threats. If you're going to send them to their room, just send them to their room. Don't threaten to send them to their room. Say, go to your room until you're ready to speak to me respectfully. I'll come check on you in 5. What do you think you're doing, or why did you do that? I hear a lot of parents a lot of teachers too get pulled into the why are you doing that, and then it's this big conversation. I clearly told you no cell phone until your work was finished. Take the phone. I'll give it back to you tomorrow, or I'll give it back to you when your work's done. The threatening, what's going to happen if I tell your dad or tell your mom when they get home? I'd like to tell your dad or your mom that you got your work done. If you don't get it done, you could speak to them about when they get it home, but think about what you want to do. I know you'll make a good choice. Okay. So these are all examples and alternatives to threats and to begging and pleading or threatening or yelling or trying to get things to stop. All right, so just to wrap up. So I found this slide. I thought this was a good one. It has a comparison between discipline versus punishment. So the green is discipline. So it says, teach someone to behave in accordance with rules by focusing on future behavior. Like I said, we want the long game here. We want the behavior to change, not just in the minute. We want it to change again and again, so it becomes a habit, and so that kids are responsible and accountable. So discipline is focusing on the future. Punishment, the point is to inflict suffering for past behavior, hoping to change future behavior. Like, we want it to hurt now, so hopefully you won't ever do it again. Discipline, it invokes the thinking brain because we're trying to teach and learn new behavior, whereas punishment, one of the big problems with punishment is it may stop it in the moment, but there really isn't a lot of quality behavior change. You start to get things like kids or teenagers just get better about avoiding the person that they're going to get in trouble from. They get better at hiding, they get better at sneaking. They're not necessarily going to learn a better way of doing things. They're just either going to avoid the person, or when you come at it with emotion, like I talked about it before, one of the other things that can happen is they come back at it with more emotion and it's not productive. So effective discipline strategies, modeling good behavior. Like I said, that slide on us needing to keep our cool, or modeling good behavior. It never made sense to me when we spank a little kid because he hit his brother. Like, what's the message there? That, like, we're hitting you to make you stop hitting him. Like, it doesn't even make sense. So we want to model good behavior, physical boundaries, calm, respectful. We want to be consistent. And we're always reevaluating age appropriateness. I'm not asking you to do something like to get super excited over the top, silly praise for a teenager. You have to make it fit the age group. And then punishment, it has some, what they say, more likely to become future bullies or victims, worse academic performance, emotional dysregulation. Says brain shrinkage. I don't know if there's scientific evidence behind that. What is this? This is parentingforbrain.com. So I don't know, maybe they have a research study on that. Okay, so in summary, discipline means to teach. The key points to positive discipline: be a good role model, be consistent, be calm and brief, be quick, pick your battles, be realistic, don't make threats or promises that you can't keep, really focus on trying to catch your child or your teenager being good. Easier said than done. But we'd like to have, we aim for 5 positive interactions for every 1 negative interaction. So it's not that negative interaction or discipline corrections are wrong, but we want there to be a 5-to-1 ratio because it's more effective overall. And we always want to remind our kids that we love them anyway, even when they're stinkers, even when they make us crazy. Part of positive discipline is we love you anyway. We're not saying you're a bad kid or saying that is bad behavior, that is unacceptable behavior, but I still love you and we're going to learn a better way to do this. Through positive discipline, your child learns respect, consideration, and self-control. They're not just behaving when the adults are around, they're behaving because they're learning a better way. Negative discipline can lead to fear and low self-esteem. A reminder for the parents out there to practice and be patient, because it's easier said than done and it's not going to be perfect. We all lose our cool sometimes. I just talked about the negative interactions and corrections. You know, removing privileges or behavior corrections are not wrong. They are sometimes necessary and they're part of it. But like I said before, the key is the ratio. It's just not all of it. And like I said, come back next week because we'll talk more specifically about ways to avoid power struggles and ways to set limits. So one final quote, discipline is helping a child solve a problem. Punishment is making a child suffer for having a problem. To raise problem solvers, we want to focus on solutions, not retribution. And I don't know who L.R. Nost is, but this is from nourishingourchildren.org. So I'll show this just before we wrap up. This is a screenshot of our parent webpage. If you haven't been there yet, the way that it works is it's basically a living, breathing website. I've put a lot of resources on there that can be helpful to parents during these times. There's some recent additions on Zoom fatigue, stress and anxiety, helping kids talk about their feelings. There's more on coping skills. I got some feedback from parents that it was more elementary centered. So I've definitely tried to put some more secondary resources on there. But the way that it works is you can scroll right to left or top to bottom. Each column is a different topic area. And then there's PDFs and downloadables, and you can see over here on the right where it says connect, name it, redirect. That's a link to the YouTube video for Dr. Dan Siegel. So it's kind of a combination of resources. I also have all of our handouts when we do a session like this. We also have, just again, a shout out to the YouTube channel. If you're watching this at home, you probably already know what it is, but we have the link to the YouTube channel on the parent webpage, and we also have a flyer for office hours. If you need help, like a 30-minute consult with me, this is open to any parent or caregiver in the district. The flyer is on this webpage. You request, there's a little form you complete, and we can meet for 30 minutes if you have specific questions about one of the tools that we've talked about in Quick Tips, or you just need some specific direction with your child. It's something I can, if I can't help with it, I can point you in the right direction and get you in contact with the right person in the district who may be able to help. So I think that's all we have today. I'm going to go to Tim real quick. Do you have any questions or comments before we move on? You can just give me you can either unmute or give me a thumbs down if you, so thumbs,
no, thumbs up, excellent presentation. Thank you.
Okay. I wasn't trying to recruit. Yeah, I paid him to be here to throw that in at the end. No, I just wanted to make sure that there weren't any questions or anything, but I think that's it for now. So I hope to see everyone next week. Bye for now.